I want to welcome Mr. Lucas here, but also I want to welcome Charles Sullivan, Charles and Earlene Sullivan I worked with for many years in the Texas legislature on prison rights and try and make it much easier since we incarcerate so many people in Texas compared to even other countries in the world. But thank you for being here. And I hope this may be the last, Mr. Chairman, of analogies to Star Wars, but I would hope those of us who really want to reform E-rate and who would like to have better broadband penetration in our urban districts would be really the wise man, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Darth Vader would be the ones who are trying to keep the status quo in the empire. But the state of communications in our country is significant since Congress made the last major changes in universal service in 1996, and is significantly different today. With 95% of the U.S. population having a telephone, but funding support still increasing at an unsustainable level, it's time we look at what return is being made on this investment and what the future of universal service would look like. The future of telecommunications, I believe the future of universal service should be broadband. This is especially true with schools and library program or E-rate. Despite the proven benefits of having schools connected, the E-rate program is capped while the high-cost program has continued to balloon. Twice as many funds are requested through E-rate than are available, but we have capped this program while allowing the high-cost fund to continue to balloon with inefficient spending under the identical support rule and rate of return regulation. This does not have to be the case, and it's important that the voice of broadband, that voice and broadband service be universal, but the current system is unsustainable because of the structure of the USF creates such strong disincentives to consolidate and reduce costs in the high-cost fund. Meanwhile, hundreds of children are waiting to use computers connected to broadband connection in many of our nation's schools. In our district, we don't have a high Internet penetration at home because while people may not qualify for low-income phone support, they work hard to make ends meet, and they may not be able to afford a computer or a monthly broadband payment. Schools and libraries are often the only places children have access to the Internet, and the universal service fees that come out of our constituents' phone bills are needed at the school, across the street, or around the block as much as anywhere else. Mr. Chairman, the future of universal service should focus on the broadband and making efficient use of the funds to deploy broadband, especially in our schools and libraries. And I want to thank the witnesses here, and I thank you for holding this hearing.
The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from New Mexico, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I listen to folks' comments about the access to telephone service in their states, and the idea that everyone in the country has access to phone service, I think, is a myth. In my state of New Mexico, the Navajo Nation is the size of the state of West Virginia, and there are far too many people who live in Indian country who don't even have any access to plain old telephone service, let alone some of the high-end services that we would all like to see our constituents have. Because of the Universal Service Fund, consumers in rural New Mexico actually had DSL and broadband before a lot of people in Albuquerque. In Des Moines, New Mexico, beautiful downtown Des Moines, New Mexico, a thriving metropolis, you have to go 3.5 hours north of Albuquerque to Raton, and then about an hour east. This is the part of the country where you can scan your entire radio dial and keep scanning for several hours as you drive and not come up with a radio station. They had access to DSL in Des Moines, New Mexico because of the telephone co-op in the Universal Service Fund earlier than Albuquerque, New Mexico did. This is a fund that has helped rural areas substantially, and I don't think that we should lose sight of the access that this fund has brought. So as we move forward in making changes to universal service and improving it, we shouldn't lose sight of the ultimate goal, which is to make sure that Americans, wherever they live, have access to technologies that can change their lives. Just a few weeks ago, my son was sitting on the computer, and I said, "What are you looking at?" And he said, "Oh, this is the valve that Dad needs to fix the ozonator." My husband and I never would have thought to go on the Internet to figure out what the valve was that Dad needed to fix the ozonator. That kind of approach to learning and information is something that our children have, that our generation is still thinking about finding the manual that's somewhere in the kitchen drawer or looking at it or going down to the hardware store and saying to the guy, do you know what this is and where I can get a replacement? Thank you for being here. I look forward to your testimony.
Great. The gentlelady time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Dingell.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your courtesy, and I commend you for this hearing. It begins a valuable discussion about universal service in telecommunications. I very much look forward to this dialogue because I strongly believe universal service is a fundamentally American value. Universal service opens the door of opportunity to all, without regard to one's address or economic status. It provides educational opportunities and makes advances in health care widely available. It allows those with disabilities a greater chance to be fully vested members of our society. It allows everyone to take part in the national dialogue that strengthens our democracy, whether one lives on a reservation, in the inner city, in the Great Plains, or in Appalachia. I want to thank our panel members for helping us to understand the real benefits of a robust and effective universal service policy. I believe that it's both wise and proper that we should start this examination of universal service by focusing on core principles, and I commend you for your leadership in this matter. I would offer the following for our consideration. First, universal service is about consumers, not carriers. As we delve deeper into the intricacies of universal service, we must ask, what is best for consumers? That should always be the central question. Broadband is the communications platform of the future. Any successful universal service program for the future must account for this reality. Universal service is about access and affordability. A proper universal service program should ensure access and affordability in places and situations where the market forces cannot or do not do so. And that is the reason both for universal service and for the Universal Service Fund. Properly targeting universal service support must ensure consistency, efficiency, and fairness. And we must protect the fund against raids and unwise use. Because everyone benefits from universal service, everyone should participate. Spreading the costs of the universal service program as widely as possible reduces the impact on each individual and assures a fairer situation for all, which will achieve greater and broader support. The program should be forward-looking, and it should be flexible enough to accommodate new technologies and service providers in a sensible way, so that we can create incentives for an innovation and better service at lower prices. A critical examination of universal service must examine regulatory disparities between different types of providers. If all types of providers are going to participate, that participation should be in as equal terms as possible. Similarly, we should also examine whether the benefits of universal service are being fairly distributed. Fundamental changes in universal service are going to mean transition. It is important that we not allow transition issues, however, to bury the fundamental changes we seek. Finally, the Congress, not the FCC, is better suited to make the tough political choices on how best to reform the system. But we must be properly informed in the Congress, and we must understand the basic policy of providing universal service to all of our people, a principle which goes back to the 1927 Act and to the 1934 Act, something which was put in place to assure that every American should have full access to the telecommunications network that is so important to our national success. By focusing on consumers and principles rather than winners and losers, we stand a greater chance of creating a viable, successful universal service mechanism for the future. I welcome this discussion, and I look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, and with my colleagues to accomplish this great purpose. Thank you.
We thank the chairman, and now we turn and recognize the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Upton.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's an old saying that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, the opposite is true here. There is something seriously broken about the Universal Service Fund, and it does need to be fixed.